Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is your host Carmina, and today we're back with another astrology video. It's a very interesting topic in astrology, and it involves the dignity of planets, especially debilitated planets, and how they impact one's life. And in order to get more clarity on that, we invited astrologer Levi Cosijn. We use tropical zodiac, but we use the Indian charts, specifically the South Indian charts, and we use the whole sign houses because they have been tried and tested for thousands of years. Welcome back, Levi.
Hi, Carmina. It's
A
good to
long
be back.
time no see on the
Long
channel.
time no see.
So, Levi prepared for us today specifically two examples of Mars in Cancer, which is supposed to be a bad, debilitated Mars. But two of the greatest athletes in the world have this placement. So before we go into the charts, do you have some opening statement about dignity or debilitation of planets?
Right. I think dignity is probably one of the most important techniques to learn in astrology. When we look up the word dignity, um, it means it's a state or a quality of being respected or honored, right? Worthy of being respected or honored. So when we look at a horoscope, we see so many symbols, and we have to be able to discern between what is positive and what is negative, right? So this is one of the primary things that we have to do to figure out what is actually happening with all those symbols. And so dignity is going to show us astrologically how to differentiate between the two, between something that is dignified and something that is undignified, or what is between um, the two extremes. And the two extremes are something can be exalted, so be dignified to its maximum degree, and something can be debilitated, which is really undignified to its maximum degree. So that's the two extremes. And then we also have a planet that can be in its own sign, which will be very comfortable. And there's also planets that are in between those extremes. Okay, so and it's interesting because when we look at two of the most incredible athletes that the world has ever known, Lionel Messi, uh, the football player, and Roger Federer, the tennis player, you can see debilitated Mars in their natal chart. When we look at the chart, we would say Mars, the planet of action and passion and fire and hunger, and our ability to soldier through difficulty and pierce through, train, all these kind of things are so important for athletes, obviously. So why do we find a debilitated planet, a debilitated Mars, which seems to be like a primary factor for athletes to be able to become stars, like the best, absolute best in their field?
So, for athletes, you think Mars is the most important planet because Mars is competitiveness and soldiering on, or are there other planets that are important for being an athlete?
Mars obviously is going to be important because it is really pushing through. Saturn can become very important, but what is equally important, and in astrology, it's always important to look at things from various perspectives, from multiple perspectives. The house placements are going to be very important. For example, the third and the sixth lords are the lords that rule the third and the sixth house will be very important. That can be Venus, it can be the moon, it can be Saturn, it can be the sun. So it depends on the arrangement according to the ascendant, and the houses, the house placements, and the rulers of those houses are going to be very important.
But the
And
athletes in general, as highly competitive athletes, we can say they are like modern day soldiers. I mean, even in the past, they were fighting battles in the arena so that a certain team can show domination or for entertainment. But a significator for highly competitive athletes, you would take as Mars, probably.
definitely, I would take Mars. We would look at Mars definitely as the natural indicator of combativeness and our willpower to succeed. Because to reach such heights in whatever field, you have to have the perseverance, which is also definitely Saturn. But Mars is capable. Is the hunger, the hunger to conquer and to defeat and to battle. And of course, we need that competitive spirit, which is what Mars represents. And of course, these houses are very soothing for what Mars represents. The third and the sixth house are very soothing for anything that is cruel, that is krura, which is Mars and Saturn. Because these houses we need to, like the third house is the house of competitiveness and pushing through and moving things around. It's about developing skill and using our skill to compete. So this is definitely the house of competition. And of course, the sixth house is the house of enemies and battling our enemies. So the third and the sixth have to be prominent for athletes. Any athlete, you'll see the third and the sixth have to be prominent somehow. Okay.
So, should we look at some charts now?
So can
Unless
I share
you
with you?
wanted to add anything else.
No, I think we can go over the charts and see some really interesting correlations between the two charts. Something that I've come to realize is sometimes how in the two cases that we will discuss, the 12th house and Rahu and Ketu also are very important. Because if you think about it, these are extreme people. These are people that have sacrificed everything for becoming the best in their field. So there is something that is being sacrificed. Their selves are being on a most um, essential level is being sacrificed for something that is truly greater than themselves.
Mars in general is also the archetype for the celibate person that has a mission and is not really family oriented or is just more oriented on the mission and pursuing the mission, whatever that is. So I guess for these two people, it's true to an extreme. And it's very interesting. They have natally Mars in Cancer. Maybe if they would have gone to a bad astrologer in the beginning of their life, he or she would have told them, "Oh, but your Mars is not good. You're not going to be a good athlete." So,
Right. I would add to that, there's a very interesting detail when we look at the Vargas. So one of the divisional charts with respect to what Mars does there. In terms of the relationship aspect in their lives and how they really had to sacrifice and focus on self and also lose themselves in that to reach that level. We can start with Roger Federer.
his birth
Mhm.
time is quite accurate, I assume.
I think it's AA Rodden rating.
It's very interesting that he's born on the 8th of August at 8 a.m. Very Rahu
Right,
numbers.
right. And Rahu is prominent because his ascendant lord, he's a Virgo ascendant, is with Rahu. So Mercury is with Rahu. But at first glance, you see Venus debilitated. We have Mars debilitated. We have the moon in its debilitation sign. So what is that all about? So first of all, maybe let's go and get a general feel for the charts. For example, we have Venus is on the ascendant. Venus is debilitated, but it's also the ninth lord. So it's one of the trine lords. And whenever you have trines combining with angles, this is a combination for Raja Yoga, for the yogas, the combinations, the planetary permutations that really align you with your dharma. And dharma means your nature, like and expressing and being able to express what you truly are. And of course, that results in feeling happy and having the sense of belonging and meaning in the world. So we have the ninth lord. And this is interesting because for a Virgo ascendant, the ninth lord, so which is, let's say, the strongest of the trine lords, according to the Vedic way of thinking. There's differences of opinion there, but it is one of the trine lords. And so for a Virgo ascendant, it's always going to be Venus, in the ascendant debilitated. We can also see, for example, for a Scorpio ascendant, the ninth lord is also going to be debilitated always. So the ninth lord, the strongest of the trine lords, is going to be in an angle in the ascendant, because the ascendant is both an angle and a trine. So these are interesting things to think about. But we see, so we have Venus in the ascendant, okay? Often Venus is also related to, because Venus is Virya, so it's enlivening, so regenerating. Venus also has that capacity.
You meant to say that Venus is also important for an athlete because they need to have the regeneration strength?
Right. And of course, a good sun is going to be important because the sun is solar and is steadfast and has consistency and has a good sense of self, okay, which is obviously going to be very important. And we can see here his ascendant lord is, of course, with the sun in its own sign. This is a very good, strong, dignified sun in the Rashi or in the natal chart. But his ascendant lord is in the 12th house, right? So you would say, as an athlete, the first has to be strong, right? The first house always has to be strong. But here we see that the self is being sacrificed somehow for a bigger goal, because you can see that the first and the 10th lord, Mercury, is going to the 12th house. So it is the self that is being lost, in a sense, is that it's being, he's giving himself away, right? And of course, it's happening in the sun sign in the 12th house. And if in Vedic astrology, the 12th is the strongest or the most malefic, or the most, it's referred to as a dushtana, and dushta means a bad place. So it's a challenging place. Okay, so, and you can also see that the North Node is there as well. So it's interesting to see how the 12th house in many famous people's charts, remarkable, how that 12th sacrifice, losing self, can also somehow regenerate something that is truly greater than themselves.
That's very interesting. And what about that Mars in Cancer? Because how can you be such a great athlete and have a Mars in Cancer?
So I mentioned that the third and the sixth houses are very important. We can also look at the 10th house, because it's a house of accomplishments, and you're performing your great deeds. It's the most visible. But the third house we really need for athletes. So we can see that the third lord is Mars, and the third lord goes to the 11th house, debilitated in Cancer. Okay, but we can see that the 11th lord is in the third house. So there's an exchange between the two, which is interesting. They're two debilitated planets, but there's a parivartana happening. There's something special about that as well. We can also see that his Atmakaraka, which is also a self point, and it's important to look at all self points, of course, when we look at athletes which are using their bodies and their selves to perform moon, and it's in a Mars sign. We have the sixth lord as well, and the sixth lord is Saturn, and Saturn is exalted, and it's joined by Jupiter. So the sixth lord is very important. The third lord is debilitated, but it's in the 11th house. And the 11th house is not a bad place to be for Mars, okay? So we have to weigh these things out. But you also have to look at the houses and house dignity in this sense. So here we see that it's not too bad, right, to have Mars in the 11th house. Now, of course, we are going to look at the dignity of Mars throughout the divisional charts. And these are what is in Vedic astrology referred to as Vargas. Varga means it's a collection of something. There's several Vargas used in Vedic astrology, several ways of dividing the zodiac in a different number of portions. There's different calculations. We're not going to elaborate on this now. We are going to look at some of these Vargas, some of these collections of elements, meaning in this case, it's going to be the planets and what the planet really does when we microscopically zoom into the specific degree that it occupies in the natal chart. So for example, when we look at Mars, we see Mars is in the tropical sign of Cancer, but it's at the 13th degree at 56 minutes. So that's going to be very important. right? There's 360 degrees in the circle, in the big wheel, in the astronomical wheel, and Mars is at 13 degrees 56 minutes of the sign of Cancer. Yes, it's debilitated, but it's also occupying a very specific point in that sign of debility. So what we can do is we can divide this sign and this zodiac, the natal chart, the astronomical chart, we can divide it in a number, in different ways, in various ways, and see what that specific degree actually signifies when we divide the sign in smaller portions. And of course, this is highly significant because these calculations of these Vargas, of these collections, is bringing us to analyze deeper specific areas in a person's life. For example, we have the Navamsha, which has to do with your Dharma. So when you are not living your Navamsha, when that planet is not capable of expressing what it signifies in Navamsha, the person feels not alive.
I see he has a very good Mars in the Navamsha.
What we're going to do is we're going to use 10 divisional charts to assess the dignity of Mars at that specific degree for Roger Federer. We know in the Rashi it is debilitated, so it's in the lowest dignity. But we have to look at all those other 9 charts, other 9 Vargas, to see what Mars is really doing there. And then we're going to have to mathematically weigh that out and come to a more informed decision, okay, of what Mars really is doing at that specific degree. So we start with the Rashi. That is the D1, this is the first number. And we have the Hora, we have the Dracona, the third divisional chart. We're not going to look at the fourth, we just could glance it, but we're not going to really incorporate this here. Then we have Saptamsha, and this is dividing the sign into 7 portions, the Navamsha into 9 portions, Nava means 9, Dasamsha into 10 portions, Dvadasamsha, dividing the sign into 12 portions, which is very interesting because it's the Varga of your past lives and also the future, actually, but your ancestral lineage. Then Sudashamsha, which is this D16, and then we're going to look at the D60. Okay, this is dividing the sign into 60 portions, so each portion is half a degree. Okay, so these are the 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I forgot one. Yes, the Trimsamsha we're also going to look at. When we look at Mars in the Rashi, it's at 13 degrees 56, as we mentioned, okay, it's debilitated. In the Hora, we're not going to look at the dignity necessarily. Here we can see it, it's also in Cancer, but it's not really important. What is important is that it's in the second part of, when we divide the sign into 2 portions, it's in the second part of a female sign, which is actually a good position for Mars to be. Then in the Dracona, we see that Mars is in Scorpio. So this is obviously, this is referred to as Swashta, which means self-abiding. It's very comfortable, very strong in its own sign. And of course, this is the chart of battling and competitiveness. Then we go to Saptamsha. Saptamsha, we have Aries. Okay, Mars is in Aries in its own sign again. You see how it's already piling up. Then we have the Navamsha. Navamsha is very, very important. All factors equal, I would give more prominence to the Navamsha than anything else.
Even more than the Rashi?
No, definitely not, because it's derived from the Rashi. It's derived from Rashi, but some people say, even in the classics, they already say, some people give it an equal weight. So here we have it in Scorpio, okay, another very good dignity. In the Dasamsha, we have it in Scorpio again, another good dignity. In the Dvadasamsha, we have it with Jupiter, but also here with Saturn, but it's in a Jupiter sign, so it's in a great friend sign. It's not a bad dignity. It's Mars likes to be in the sign of Jupiter because they're friends. Then in the Shodashamsha, we have it again in Scorpio. You see? I mean, it's already so great. Here in the Swashamsha, it's Venus sign. It's a benefic sign. It's not in a good
in the Trimsamsha as well, right?
In Scorpio, right? So this Mars is an excellent Mars.
If you have Mars at 13 degrees 56 minutes, then it means you're going to have it good throughout the Vargas.
Exactly. And this is the amazing thing. And this is what the classical astrologers it's not only Vedic system, but also the Hellenistic astrologers. All classical systems have been using the divisions, the Vargas. So amshas are portions, and then we group those portions into Vargas, into collection.
In most of the Vargas that we looked at, it's in Scorpio and it's an old sign or in other favorable signs. So looking at that definitely brings a more detailed perspective. You said there was also something about the nodes that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I would say, like, if we go back, I'll just close this one here. Roger Federer's ascendant lord is Mercury, and Mercury goes in Leo, and Leo we see also Rahu there. So there is also something peculiar. Rahu and Ketu always show the extremes of something. And of course, this isn't a highly or a very extreme person. It's the best tennis player that the world has ever had. We see like 3 planets in the 12th house. We have a debilitated Scorpio in the 3rd house. We have Mars debilitated. It doesn't seem like is this such a great chart.
There is also an interchange between the moon and Mars, so that also cancels the debilitations. So that's already something besides the Vargas that brings strength to the chart. I think Miley Cyrus also has that, Mars in Cancer, Moon in Scorpio. So that's something that already helps.
That already helps. And of course, in the case of an athlete, the 3rd house is going to be important. So his moon, which is Atma Karaka, Atma is the soul, Karaka is the significator. It's the planet that is most intimately involved with your soul's maturation process. It's the planet that has gathered the most light within a sign. So it reflects the soul most clearly, in a sense. So it's a very important self point. And we see that it's in a Mars sign in Scorpio, so he goes deep. This guy goes deep into it, and it's in the 3rd house. He's going to push through. Is it going to be comfortable? No, it's not going to be comfortable. Why? Because the moon doesn't like to be necessarily, it's not really equipped to be in the 3rd house, but he is the best player that the world has ever had. So it's one segment, it's one aspect, one element. There seems to be something off with the chart, but the offness of it creates this incredible result.
So it's like in math when minus times minus creates a plus. And also,
I would say yes.
You were mentioning something about the nodes. Of course, the south node in the 6th house is going to give very competitive tendencies, like in the past lives or his ancestors, they were used to dealing with problems, fighting enemies. So he has that willingness to fight his problems or his enemies and overcome them. So that's very interesting.
That's a very interesting point. I want to be sure and nuanced enough when I say it doesn't seem like a great chart. We're not saying that something that is bad is good, because we have to be careful with, like, even with the concept of cancellation of debilitation, which is something that actually does work. But we have to be careful that when a planet is exalted, it's exalted. It means it has its highest expression. When it's debilitated, it's low, and it's really low. So we should treat it like that. The symbol should be really clear. When something is off, it's off. When it's good, it's good. But it is true. There is an exchange between the 3rd and the 11th house. But the point is that we have a 12th lord, so a 12th house that has a Mulatrikon planet, so that has a very strong sun. So losses and sacrifice, because the 12th house is losing, and losing means sacrificing something, is very strong, and his self is there, and Rahu's also there. But it is something that is highly relevant and highly significant when we look at the life of a person like this. Okay, so what he actually accomplished. But to bring it back to dignity, we can see that planet that is so essential, Mars, that is so essential for athletes, is in a very, very, very good dignity when you look at it more microscopically, in a more nuanced way. And this is what the classical astrologers did. They were very thorough with those things. It's been highly developed for thousands of years. I just want to add one more thing here for this chart, and then move. And then maybe to end, we can see that Federer's 5th lord, which is also a trine lord, is exalted. Okay, and we mentioned, of course, very important The sixth lord is exalted. For athletes, it's going to be important, but it's also blessed by Jupiter. And Jupiter is the fourth and the seventh lord. So here we have two angular lords connected to the fifth lord in the second house. Okay, so which is also going to be very important. So maybe we should move on to Lionel Messi and then see if we can
Yes.
find some correlation between the two charts. In Lionel Messi's chart, we can see he's an ascendant Aquarius, 4 degrees 58. Okay, the ascendant lord is Saturn. Saturn is not exalted. Saturn goes to the 11th house, so it's not going to the 12th house. But we can see that for a Aquarius ascendant, the 12th house is also the ruler of the first. Okay, so we also have a 112 thing happening there already, and the 12th has to do with the first house is the self and anything that is visible and strong and very visible. And the 12th house completely takes away from that. That's why the 12th house is the strongest of the bad places, of the difficult places, because it takes away from manifesting things, from concretizing things and realizing things. It's about sacrificing things. And it is also Saturn. Okay, Saturn is here in the sign of Sagittarius, which is, of course, also a warrior sign. This is a fire sign. And we have Saturn. Actually, when you look at some of the classics, Saturn does quite well in the Jupiter signs. It's not in the best dignity because Saturn is neutral. There's a neutral friendship between them. But if you look at some of the classics, it is mentioning that Saturn is doing well in both Sagittarius and Pisces. The ascendant it's in the 11th house. Okay, it's also, it's not too bad. Okay, it's not too bad. And of course, the 11th house also has to do with entertainment. He's an amazing entertainer. Same with Roger Federer and his Mars being connected with and in the exchange with the moon and so on. So the 11th house has to do with that aspect as well. Of course, they are amazing. Federer has a certain static posture in a sense, like he's noble, because his ascendant is with the sun. He has a strong Leo sun. There's a noblesse there. Here we have a warrior, right? Definitely, like this is the ascendant lord in a Jupiter sign. He is a Jupiterian personality for sure. He also has the Atmakaraka Jupiter, Lionel Messi, in a Mars sign, right? So
Federer had a moon Atmakaraka in Scorpio, so less visible again. So although he's very visible, he's in a way, he doesn't want to be necessarily in the spotlight. He just likes to be there for the sport. He doesn't necessarily want to be there for something else. And I think it's a little uncomfortable for him. But
right.
he just probably thinks about the result.
Exactly. Remember the Rahu thing? Here we also have the Atmakaraka Jupiter is also with Rahu. So there's also something peculiar. He's very short, like a small bird, has that energy of so fast. He has great skillfulness and dexterity.
And I think that's very interesting because you said he's like a bird. His Mars is with Mercury, and Mercury is the significator of birds. So he has that craftiness and that flexibility of Mercury as well. And again, the sixth house is highlighted. In the other chart, we had the South Node in the sixth house. Here we have Mars, Mercury, and the Sun. So very competitive person.
Right. Federer is an ascendant Virgo, so the third house is Mars, right? It's Scorpio. And for Lionel Messi, it is an Aquarius ascendant, and the third house is Mars as well. But here it's Aries. So here we have the third lord and the sixth. The third lord goes to the sixth house. So in terms of house dignity, it's very good because Mars loves it in the third and the sixth house. It's debilitated, yes, it's in a low dignity. So we're going to have to look what is going on here. So we're going to do the same thing and look at those placements in the Vargas. But just to get a feel for the chart a little bit, we have also the sixth lord, Moon, is strongly aspecting his ascendant lord. So it's a sixth aspect again on his ascendant, right? And he's already like under the influence of Saturn, so he's going to be strong and cruel with himself and in what he wants to accomplish. There's going to be discipline and perseverance. This guy's not going to give up. And he has a sun in Cancer, For Federer, it was the sun in Leo, royal signs.
And you were mentioning before that he's very short. Well, Mars is the planet that is the archetype of short. It's short and competitive.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting how it connects. Like Mars is, I mean, Saturn is his ascendant lord, but it's in the sign of Jupiter. And of course, Jupiter here is in the third house in a Mars sign. And it's also his Atmakaraka with Rahu. So here also we see that the self is connected to Rahu. The case of Federer was the same thing, it was the ascendant lord. So there's something really extreme about these people, and it has to be indicated. Okay, but we have the third going to the sixth, which is, of course, going to be very relevant.
I was thinking about another historically short person that was a great soldier and very ambitious and became very famous, Napoleon. I'm curious where his Mars was. So let's take a look at the Vargas and see what's happening there.
All right. So Mars is debilitated here. Oh, the degree is 22 degrees, 30 minutes for Lionel Messi. Now, in the Hora, it is not considering the 15 degrees, so it means it's the second half, which is good. In the Drekana, he's in the sign of Jupiter, which is, of course, again, a friend sign. When you look at the dignity in the natal chart, you'll see that Mars and Jupiter are at a favorable distance from each other, making it even better. So he's in a great friend sign. And then the Saptamsa, we have it in a Virgo sign. Mars doesn't like to be in either of the Mercury signs. So this is a little less. Okay, then in the Navamsha, he has Mars exalted. Federer had it in Scorpio. Messi has it in Capricorn. And in the third house. Then in the Dasamsa, we have it in Leo. Strong dignity. In the Dwadasamsa, it's in Aries, in its own sign. Strong. In the Shodashamsha, it's in Aries, in its own sign. In the Trimsamsa, it is in Leo again. And in the Shashtyamsha, it's in Aries again. So, I mean, this is really strong dignity.
It's very interesting because for Federer, mostly it was Mars in Scorpio. So it was more strategic, more hidden, like he has a more, like also with his ascendant in the 12th house, a more hidden quality. And it's also different because in tennis, you face one opponent at a time. But in football, you have 10 other people around you that are your enemies. So it's maybe also has to do with the type of sport they are involved in. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. And also in Chaturtamsha here, he has it in Aries. So I think it's important when people see a debilitated planets in a chart to, I think that the lesson here is don't jump to conclusions too easily when you are doing astrology.
Yes, especially when you're a beginner or when you hear someone making a video and making very radical statements that this is good or this is bad. These are very generic statements and they're made by people that are not really familiar with astrology for a long time, maybe, or people that are looking for a shock reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Okay, so thank you very much, Levi, for joining us today to shed some light into the dignity and how dignity can be modified by the different Vargas, especially. And before we let you go, are you working on anything now at the moment? How can people reach you?
I am currently writing a book on Rashi aspects, which is a technique that is given in Jaimini's Upadesa Sutras, which is an amazing astrological text that I have been fascinated by for many years. And I am writing my own ideas about how I think that signs actually relate to each other according to Jaimini's Upadesa Sutras. Okay, so I've been researching that for a number of years and I'm in the process of actually writing it down. I give courses in astrology, so just go to my website, levicozen.com. And I'm also available for readings, so you can reach me on my website.
That's great. I'm gonna link your website in the description and also your YouTube channel. if people want to subscribe to you. I know you have a number of videos on astrology and human design. So thank you again, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.
Thank you, Carmina.